Hey everyone, and welcome to the 3Gs, a new replay commentary series brought to you by Clan Game 3 at clang3.net. I am Balance,
And I am Cardhu.
and today we're bringing you a PvP on Belshir Vestige. This is a ladder game. Spawning in the lower right-hand corner as the red Protoss player. You may have heard of this guy, a former Starcraft 1 player who is a commentator, streamer, general, guy on the scene extraordinaire. It is EG's iNcontroL.
Lady Core.
Lady Core.
And spawning in the top left as the blue Protoss. He is a former Orc player from Warcraft 3, from the land of Down Under. He is Clan Game 3's very own FIGHTO.
Alright, so PvP. Not a ton to talk about at the very start of the game unless we're seeing some cheese or something, but it looks like that's not happening. So let's talk about the map. What do we think about Belshir Vestige for PvP?
Belshir Vestige, really a good map. There's going to be a couple of interesting things that we're going to want to look for. First things first, there's going to be a lot of choke points here, so AoE is going to be very, very strong. I generally like Colossus on this map, but we'll have to see what sort of tech trees they choose. The other thing is that it is a two-player map. It doesn't look like they're going for cheeses on this particular game, but it is definitely something that each player needs to scout for. Something like proxy 2 gates, cannon rushes, all very, very valid strategies on a map like Belshir Vestige. Another thing that's interesting to note is the how good Blink Stalkers are on this map. I'm personally not a fan. There's not very much space for Stalkers to maneuver on this map in terms of they're able to blink into the main, but there's not really a good escape path. Think of maps like Neoplanet S and Star Station. I would say that those are much more favorable maps to Blink Stalkers. And then kind of the last thing about Belshir Vestige is that it is a pretty large map, and there are a ton of different places to hide things. Hidden pylons, hidden, potentially some proxy tech buildings. We'll have to see, and we'll have to wait and see what unfolds.
All right, so slightly different scouting decisions here at the start of the game. iNcontrol's go ahead and going to opt for the full scout of his opponent's base. Doesn't really tell him a whole lot, but looks like a slightly later scout here from FIGHTO. Both players, if you notice, did do a little bit of scouting around their base for the cheese, like you said. It is very important to scout that on Belshir because you have these big bases. But we do have slight deviation in build going into the start of this game. If you notice, FIGHTO actually just finished his second assimilator. So iNcontroL went for the very standard PvP build that's very, sort of becoming very popular right now, which is to get 2 gases before Cybernetics Core. The only trouble with that is that it does tend to, there's a slight hitch in that build most of the time where you end up being slightly behind on pro production. But as a result, you get more gas, and so we see he's able to get the earlier Mothership Core out, whereas FIGHTO is actually a little bit more mineral heavy, and so with a slightly later Mothership Core. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But already, FIGHTO just a slight little supply lead because of the early minerals.
Yeah, so and also with those earlier minerals, it allowed FIGHTO to get an early zealot, and just kind of in these early stages of PvP, the more units that you can get, the safer you are, and so it's a really, really nice opening by FIGHTO. Allowed him to stay extremely safe against anything iNcontroL could potentially be throwing at him.
Yeah, we see FIGHTO being very active on the map here with his first few units. He sent that Zealot over the right-hand side, scouting for any proxy pylons. The 2 Stalkers, running around the map. And now it looks like he wants to push out a little bit and sort of see what his opponent's up to. He hasn't been able to get a ton of vision after his initial scout. He looks like the 2 little armies are going to run into each other here in the middle. iNcontroL, with just the Stalkers and the Mothership Core, thinks he's outmatched, and he's going to go ahead and head home. Good decision there by iNcontroL. But if we take a look at the production and the bases, over in FIGHTO's base, we see 2 gateways coming down, and iNcontroL actually has his 3 gates down already. So just a very, very safe opening, right, in PvP. There are many popular builds out there that you go 1 gate into Stargate or 1 gate into Twilight, but that's a little riskier. You're picking a tech tree, and it's a little bit rock paper scissors. So the 3 gate opener is a little safer. You just try to get map presence out and try to sniff out what your opponent's doing. But neither player has been able to get a full scout yet, and so it looks like they both opted for probably the safest option, which is Robo.
Yeah, so FIGHTO actually tried to sneak a probe in after putting down that proxy pylon, and he wasn't able to get into the base, and almost immediately as a response, he warped in 2 Stalkers into his middle line. So that's going to be the safest play because it's going to be able to throw out Oracles. We've seen right now at his robotics facility, he's chrono boosting out an Observer. That's going to, for any potential DTs. So Fido's just doing everything possible that he can to stay safe. And as a result of him having to warp in those Stalkers in his main, he's going to have to leave the ramp because he no longer has map control.
Yeah, he's content to head home at this point. He actually also warped in a sentry at home just to be extra safe. Just very, safe play by Fido here. But I think he's happy with what he did. He was able to hang out that ramp for long enough that he knows his Nexus is going to be earlier than whatever Nexus iNcontroL puts down. And so, slight economic advantage that he was able to take there. And he's going to, be happy to sort of head home, sit on that slightly earlier Nexus, and then from here just play defensive, defend the Nexus, and go into a macro game.
Yeah, so iNcontroL has complete knowledge over Fido's expansion timing as well. If you could take a look at Fido's expansion, iNcontroL does have a sneaky little pylon there. So as a response, iNcontroL is going to put down his own expansion, and it looks like he's trying to get an Observer Scout into Fido's base right now, but it does get picked off. And so Fido is no longer in the dark. He now knows that iNcontroL decided to go on Robotech. And so that's actually very, very valuable information for him because prior to that point, he had no idea what sort of tech path that iNcontroL had decided on.
Yeah, so now Fido can actually feel a little bit safer. He's a little less worried now about any Oracles flying in or any DTs that he has to be, super leery of. One thing to note is that iNcontroL was able to get Fido supply blocked for a second there just by killing the proxy pylon that was over here on the bottom side of the map. So these little supply blocks and things, tend to add up over time. Especially when you're on the same tech tree as your opponent, just little macro things like that end up factoring in a lot. And there, Fido returns the favor. We see iNcontroL right now currently supply blocked, and Fido starting to take a little bit of a supply lead. With the earlier Nexus, we can actually see he's 6 probes ahead right now, which is going to be very, very big.
Yeah, very, very interesting response there by Fido. So he used a sentry to send a hallucinated Phoenix over to iNcontrol's base just to get a little bit more scouting information. He was able to scout that iNcontrol has put down the robotics bay, and almost instantly as a response, Fido puts down 2 Stargates.
Yeah, okay. I like this decision a lot from Fido. I think this is actually really smart. Traditionally in PvP, when it's Robo versus Robo, that tends to go straight into Colossus Wars, which is the way things played out a lot of the time in Wings of Liberty when 4 gates didn't happen. And Fido, instead choosing to mix it up a little bit here. He notices that iNcontroL, still only has 3 active gates and has gone directly into the robotics bay. And so instead he says, okay, I don't need my Robo bay. I'm just going to go ahead and mass up Void Races, which is going to be amazing against anything that you make out of your Robo Bay, and is going to be really, really great given the fact that you have a low gateway count. Perhaps if the gateway count was higher, he would have been more afraid of doing that, but given that only 3 gates from iNcontroL, he's going to go ahead and try to win the Void Ray war, which I think is a really, really great decision at this point.
Yeah, so iNcontroL is able to scout that Fido was going those Stargates, and in response, he puts down 2 Stargates of his own, and also he's researching the +1 weapons upgrade. So he really is going to be looking to take it to that late game, win those air wars. But one thing interesting to note is that iNcontroL did build a Colossus, and so that's going to be a lot of wasted resources. As you mentioned, that Colossus is not going to be very, very useful in these fights, and he had to build the Colossus, he had to put down the Robo Bay, so he's put in a lot of wasted resources into building that one Colossus without range.
Yeah, and Fido just able to be slightly ahead in the sort of the scouting war in this game with a slightly more streamlined build. In addition to the earlier economic advantage, we can see he's starting to take a pretty noticeable supply lead. And both players being diligent with their scouting. Again, now Fido knows that he's up against also double Stargate. That really isn't going to change his plan very much. But the one really important thing about that particular scout is he's able to get a sense of his opponent's army size. So now, if we take a look at what's going on, going back to all vision here, we can see Fido right now has no interest in taking a third. He was able to see that his opponent's army and be able to be fairly confident that he is able to win a fight right now. And so now, he's not really making probes right now. He's just going to continue to pump out units, and I think he's going to go for a big 2-base timing. He's sending his stalkers on the map to get a little bit of vision, starting to put proxy pylons on the map. It looks like he's about to get really aggressive really soon, and hopefully catch it iNcontroL right as he presumes the 3rd base would be going down.
Yeah, so they're fighting over right now over that watchtower, and that watchtower is going to be so important because you're going to be able to outmaneuver your opponent the more vision you have. Fido is sending over a probe right now over to where iNcontrol's third normally would be. As we can see, it is down. Taking a look at Fido's vision, he hasn't actually scouted the third yet. It's just, as you mentioned, the standard the third base timing, and so he's going to look to be putting a little bit of pressure on that third base before it can actually get up and running. Right now, like they're still fighting over that watchtower, trying to get into the best position possible in order to take an engagement.
And that moment right there, iNcontroL was able to get a really good look at what's going on. He knows that Fido's full army is sitting at the watchtower, and we'll probably see him in a much more defensive position. You can see him camping his army right at the crossroads between these two ramps, right in the middle, trying to make sure that he can fend off an attack from any angle. Fido just running his probe over into the third, now knows that the third is going down. iNcontroL going to go ahead and focus down Fido's pylon here. Fido's going to respond by morphing in a few zealots. Looks like he's just trying to pull iNcontroL out of position. His army's ready to run up, and iNcontroL almost runs over with his army. Fido's about to poke in, maybe. Looks like Fido's just going to back up. Both players just trying to jockey for position right now, trying to get the fight they want.
Yeah, I really like iNcontrol's decision to use the Nexus Cannon there. It was very obvious to him that Fido was using those zealots to try to pull his army out of position, and so by using that Nexus Cannon, he was able to keep his army in a good position. Even though Fido has a significant supply lead here, with good positioning, he could easily lose.
But here's the fight. Looks like it's going to happen right here. Fido moving in with the 3 Phoenixes that he added late into his army. Phoenixes are sucking up some of the Void Ray damage, and the Void Rays of Fido looks like they are going to just clean house. Looks like iNcontroL was caught a little bit here. Fido now, yeah, it looks like the Void Rays are cleaning up, and the ground army has not really been touched. This is going to be a very one-sided fight in the end. iNcontroL, like you said, I think you're right. I think he might have been able to hold on had he been in good position, but he was just a little bit caught in that moment. His zealots were all clumped up in the middle of his army. The Phoenixes of Fido were able to get in there and soak up some hits, and then now, yeah, we're going to have a pretty quick win here. There's not a whole lot iNcontroL left can do. He's pulling his probes, chrono boosting his Stargates. He's going to move out with his probes, but I think there's just too much from Fido. I think this is going to be, yep, and there it is, GG from iNcontroL, and that's all right. That's the game. And some nice moves there by Fido at the end.
Yeah, I really like his usage of the Phoenix there. If you took a look at the units tab right before the fight, iNcontroL was actually ahead in Void Rays, and he had the +1 upgrade. And so the purpose of those Phoenix was not actually to do damage to any part of Fido's or to iNcontrol's army, but to soak up the initial damage. By soaking up the initial hits from the Void Ray, Fido was able to proc his prismatic alignment and get those first hits off on iNcontrol's Void Rays. And Void Rays are a type of unit where if you win the initial engagement, they just snowball, and that's exactly what we saw here.
Yeah, really, just a nice little move, getting exactly sort of the position he wanted going into that fight, and just, yeah, really great with those Phoenixes. Very clever play. So yeah, all around solid stuff here from Fido in this game. A really nice engagement at the end, but he was also, he was up. Like even like you mentioned, he was behind in Void Rays, but he was ahead, almost 30 supply, and that was, due to just strong macro decision making. He got a slight econ advantage early on. He had that mineral heavy build that led him to nice streamlined pro production, and then he was able to just play a very safe, cautious game, and he was able to determine that he was ahead and be able to take advantage of his position. So very nice play there by Fido.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still not convinced that I like iNcontrol's taking of his third there. I think had he known his position in the game, the fact that he was a little bit behind, I would have liked to see him focus a little bit more on units. I think he thought he could hold given his given the fact that he had more Void Rays and upgrades. But Fido just had such a bigger army than iNcontrol there.
Yeah, I would like to see iNcontrol be a little more active with his observer. Even if you take a look at the units tab at the end here, we do see that iNcontrol still has the one observer, and it was sort of just with his army going into that last fight. And I would have liked to have seen him, be a little more. Yeah, there's the observer now being sort of right where I think it probably should have been going into that final engagement. He he was sort of like I was saying at the time. He sort of got caught. His zealots were clumped up in the middle of his army. He wasn't able to get the concave that he wanted with the zealot tank that he needed. If he had been a little bit more active about scouting right then, he might have been able to hang in there. And had he been able to hold, his third base would have won in the game. But yeah, just very, very slight, decision making there by FIGHTO to sort of like sneak around this. He poked up this one ramp and then sneak around and hit him up the other ramp right when iNcontroL wasn't looking, and that ended up being a huge part of how he was able to take that fight so convincingly. So yeah, nice little positional battle, and cool game.
Yeah, I actually really like your point about the observer and getting scouting information, because even all the cool moves that FIGHTO did, even with the Phoenix and things like that, all of that could have been avoided had iNcontroL known where FIGHTO's army was. If he knows where FIGHTO's army is, he can proc his own prismatic alignment. He can focus fire FIGHTO's void rays. He has more void rays, and the Phoenix aren't really going to make that big of a difference, other than the fact that they're soaking up damage. But if FIGHTO's void rays are all dead, iNcontroL easily wins that fight.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I think we'll call it here for today. So this has been another replay brought to you by the 3Gs at clanG3.net. I am Balance.
And I am Cardhu. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.